done. Yeah, yeah. No question. No question.
Justice Thomas, can we ask who you were meeting with today?
What'd you say?
Can we ask who you were meeting with this afternoon?
What'd you say?
Who were you meeting with this
Oh,
afternoon?
nobody.
You weren't meeting with the speaker, you were in his
Oh,
office.
God, no.
So what are you doing up here?
Oh, just walking.
No meetings in particular?
I'm going to tell you about.
Tomorrow's going to be a big day at the court, huh? Final day of decisions?
Oh, I guess so.
You want to give us a sneak peek of some of the decisions?
Nope.
But you can't tell us why you're up here today, who you're meeting with? Who were you meeting with, sir? Were you up here for any particular reason? No info on who you may have been meeting with? Anyone in House GOP leadership? That's who has offices in there. Any matters you were up here discussing? Any comment on today's decisions and the end of the Supreme Court term?
You have good questions.
And any comment on the end of the term?
You have good questions.
You want to answer any of them? Any
No.
comment at all?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Good. Wow. Good everything. Happy
everything.
4th of July. Happy Independence Day.
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Happy day to let them do what they wanted to us without British interference day. Because that's what the Declaration says. The George III has stirred up insurrection among us with them damn Indians and them blacks. We getting away from you so we can do what we want. So yeah. But yeah, what'd you think of that clip? Professor? Huh?
He's so infuriating, like, and weird. The goofy laughing, I mean, it's goofy. What is that? What is that? You know,
He may have been a slave his whole life.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
That's because in class, when he was a little boy, you and the rest of them black girls called him ABC, America's Blackest Child, and scarred him for the rest of his life.
Man,
You had to go get him a big protector. Shout out to Jenny. Anyway,
I feel like everything that we're in right now is because of something somebody did to somebody in their childhood that they couldn't grow up. We are suffering
of nation states.
Childhood trauma. Can we just get
Childhood
counseling? Can we get some help? Please, can we get some mental health? Please.
What'd she say? What'd she say? Oh, no, I don't want to do that.
But you know, and then the poor little Negro guard. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. In the very place where they stormed the place, tried to kill your ass. See, thank you, sir. But you know, in that moment, as it was reported, and I'm sure you saw it, a lot of people saw it, good everything to everybody, to you, especially on a day like this, because as we know, we're to the slaves. But
Well, that speech actually was delivered tomorrow.
Yes,
I went down a whole rabbit hole. Like,
oh, come on, talk to us. You was going down. Okay, yeah, tell us.
I'm getting back into the writings. Y'all go over to the hub.news. I'm like, thinking of processing. I'm kind of just doing musings. I'm easing back into writing because, I don't really have a good editor. I mean, I have, I don't have somebody that can challenge me yet. But, I'm still going to put words out there because I feel like maybe 100 years from now, people will read. So, so it'll be there marking time.
On Yuka Brown Jackson. That's why she's writing what she's writing. Today.
One day we'll all be free. So we'll be reading. And so I'm just writing. So I wrote a piece for tomorrow because I didn't realize, and we've talked about it here, of course, but sometimes the dots don't always connect. And it's like the 5th of July was really about New York, because when New York declared freedom for the enslaved people on the 4th of July, and the freed people decide to celebrate on the 4th of July, violence happened because how dare you try to be free alongside me? So then they did it on the 5th. So the indictment on this country came because, we had to carve out a day so that we could celebrate our freedom. And so then Frederick Douglass. And then I also spent some time with Ken Burns, who you've been talking with, and I can't help but think that the influence of sitting with you on Urban View Mornings is showing up now in his edits and in his work. And this is the goal. I think sometimes we can look, people are mostly ignorant until they learn, right? And when you are somebody at a level where nobody's really checking you, or you cobble together these historians and you think you have it all figured out, and then you get asked a question from Dr. Greg Carr that makes you sit up and shift. Really, really smart human people shift. And I think I could see it in his work. And starting that docuseries with the indigenous people and then the enslaved people, and then talking about how, the South Carolinians were like, hey, this is what we doing? And they were like, no, not you Negroes. No, y'all, no, let's send the militia in. They're trying to, no, we the only people that could uprise. I was like, oh, wow. Oh, this has been from the very beginning. This has been this country's foundings. And so we have to, we have to be honest.
Well, he has I think Burns, and as much as it would be satisfying in some ways to think that anything you or I might say or have said so far would have that kind of impact on him, realizing that all that stuff that he has done, that he's now released, was in the can before, I guess either one of us ever talked to him, but realizing that it doesn't have to be because he seems to have a curiosity that has certainly, I would be willing to bet without hesitation that he has encountered those voices, because there are only so many Wynton Marsalises and Margot Jeffersons. There are only so many Gerald Earlys and Albert Murrays. There are only so many Blacks who are willing to walk the path with a Ken Burns and prop up the myth making of American exceptionalism in a way that I think in his earlier attempts, or his earlier attempts to lay the foundation for a narrative of American identity, were much more comfortable. But ultimately, as he continues, if in an honesty, I think I agree with you. There's an honesty, there's an attempt to understand. And so you inevitably come to the conclusion that this is not what you thought it was when you started out. And so the American Revolution, to me, looks, feels, and sounds very different than, for example, his documentary on World War II. Before that, the one we all know him for, of course, in many ways, which is the Civil War. But it's the cultural meaning-making documentaries that have forced him, I think, to this moment, whether it be jazz, whether it be baseball, because the Africans anchor that. And it's one thing to talk to Gerald Early. Well, no, when I listen to Billie Holiday, it makes me sad. It's one thing to talk to Wynton Marsalis. The beautiful thing about it is, jazz is really democracy. And then it's another thing to talk to Jackie McLean, to talk to Dizzy Gillespie, to take interviews that other people did with Miles Davis, and then realize it wasn't about democracy, man. It wasn't about. So what we see in the American Revolution is, as you say, he opens with the fact that it was not one American. There were many revolutions.
Yeah.
And for him to weave in the indigenous people, not as one people, because they were not, as dozens of nations fighting, and then I think that's the natural result of somebody trying to be honest.
In fact, the whole Constitution was modeled after indigenous ways of governance. So I say all this to say that true freedom comes in discovery and the ability to be able to change. I think too often, particularly those of us who sit in these Black bodies in this country, we give people what we think we want them to know so that we can get ahead. We talk to them in a way that makes them comfortable because we think we'll get paid. And it has proven, white comfort is very valuable in those marketplaces, right? White comfort gives you money. But if the white people who are producing the things are really about this life, they want to be challenged, just like I want to be challenged as a writer. I want a good editor to come back and say, hey, what have you considered this? Hey, what about that? It's not just about moving around commas and periods. It's about challenging you to think deeply, which is something that I crave desperately. But that's what, true freedom is, like the freedom to actually grab the truth as it evolves, because truth is evolving as you evolve. And I think that is our responsibility. Those of us who sit in community with folk, we have to challenge them to be better and to think more deeply, even if you think that might upset them and you might lose a job or a check or whatever. I'm not saying people should go out and lose their jobs in this time, but I'm saying that in creative spaces where 100 years from now, somebody's going to view this, whatever this is, In Class with Carr or a Ken Burns documentary, we have to get it as right as we can, or at least put enough questions and breadcrumbs out for people to go find it for themselves. And I'm so proud that it was the last July 4th that we were here 6 years ago. That's crazy. 6 years ago, ironically, we were right here in class. There wasn't even a Nubia. We were on my YouTube page just every Saturday. And
session 16, which was entitled "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." Yeah. And remember, on the 3rd of July, which of course was that previous day, we remember, and we talked about it. In fact, we talked about Mount Rushmore because that's where Bozo was. And remember who introduced it? Doggone Christy Nome, who was the governor of North Dakota. And we talked about it all. So if y'all want to go, it's sitting right there on your YouTube page, session 16. That's exactly right. And we were in the middle of the turn up. We were in the middle of the street. In fact, after that, it was probably one of the many days I went down there, across from Lafayette Park Square, where subsequent to that, Black Lives Matter was painted in the street. John Lewis was still walking the earth. Nancy Pelosi was trying to get up from bending on her knee with a kente cloth around her neck. How quickly we forget, Proud. That was yesterday. That was yesterday. Yeah. So in other words, nothing is permanent, which really leads us back to Clarence Thomas. Nothing is permanent. In that moment, like you, I felt, look at this shuffling ass Negro, because the next day, of course, Trump versus Barber was released. However, what the reporting is, that the speculation is that he wasn't there to visit his masters. He was there trying to prevent, perhaps, or extend the time he's on top of the earth before he goes and meets his master. Apparently, there's an office there for the physician, who is the physician for the House and for the Supreme Court, Brian Moynihan. So he may have been over there at 78 years old, the longest assistant justice. And so, of course, that's nothing you want, or maybe getting the report back on some news. We just don't know, because he said, nothing I want to talk to you about. Yes, no, you don't want to tell nobody that, and you shouldn't. Clarence, I hope you live another 20, 30 years, man, because I want you to see what's coming. And your little racist friend from from Trenton, Sam Alito, I want you to live another 20, 30. Because Nina Totenberg, as we know, we talked about that, we all talked about it. She said, I made a mistake. I misheard. I thought they said he was retiring. I don't know that you misheard, Nina, or I don't know that that's not inaccurate, because Thomas and Alito, if both of them announce in the next, Alito more than Thomas, because I think Clarence likes the money too much. He likes the head pats too much to retire. He may be like his friend William Rehnquist. He may die on the bench. But Alito, I could see him going. I could very much see him going, because as a purebred racist, he wants to make sure that he can cement his thing. So they got a list of 40-year-olds. Now, all you Negroes around here talking about whether you're gonna vote or not, just understand that's fine. You better be in the street bare knuckle fighting, because they got a plan. I could see Alito announcing. Right. I could absolutely see that. Yeah, between now and December for sure.
Right. And it's like, it's interesting. Clarence Thomas, I think he wanted to be a priest at one point, as you talk about his ultimate master. I wonder how he's working out his salvation with fear and trembling, and if somehow he's justifying all of the harm he's doing. Like, I don't know what kind of pretzel you have to twist yourself in as a person of quote unquote faith, because they both think they're people of faith. Alito's a staunch Catholic or what have you. To be a person of faith and do all of these dastardly, horrible things. I don't know how you have to really delude yourself, or to believe that you're doing good.
Do you think it's that hard? If you're fighting the Crusades, then Muslims aren't human, and they're not under the shield of God. If you're fighting a crusade, they're not human, so therefore it's your religious duty to stop them.
Where is that in red? Where is that Jesus ever said to do that?
Well, they never read Jesus.
Oh, so what's a Christian then? Dr. Carr, is it Christ?
I'm just saying.
You know
what a Christian is. That's what got Jeremiah right in trouble. That's it.
But Jesus, are you fighting? Are you following, rather? You are fighting that particular Jesus. That's weird to me. That you could have that Bible upside down, I guess, because that makes sense. And
which might have been on purpose.
Yeah. It was a
I mean,
yeah.
I'm showing y'all. I don't give a damn about this book. Y'all stupid as hell. I mean, y'all gonna give me, what was it? $1 billion+ off of vibes. And then I got the money out. Now you sitting here with no life savings, mad, but you still can't bring yourself not to worship me. I don't know. That's beautiful.
You said you went down to the festival yesterday and got a corn dog.
I went down there.
Did you get some corn dog cotton candy?
It wasn't nothing to eat.
Did you
if I wanted to spend the money, got on the train, went down there, and in the time it took to get off the train and walk to the mall and come in on the side where the Smithsonian Castle is, which has been reopened. Got down to the entrance and it kept saying, go down for entrance, go down for entrance. Well, I see the entrances. Get there in the street and and pass by some, and shout out to these brothers. I didn't ask their names, didn't want to know their names, but in the 150,000 degree weather down there, these black men with all that hot ass National Guard stuff on. I'm like, brothers, do y'all patriotic duty. Then they bust out laughing. I say, all right, man, go pass out of here. What you gonna do, bro? Hey, man. I said, you want to go home, don't you? Don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. They watching. Then and we just laughing. So I got down to the intersection, got down there, and the young National Guard boy, young white kid. Oh yeah, can't go in. Why not? They just people been passing out in heat stroke, so it's closed until 5. Well, I just started laughing because got down there just in time, and I'm looking, I'm saying, wait, this is more people than I expected. Wasn't a lot. Wasn't shoulder to shoulder, wasn't trying to get by. Walking past the Smithsonian, saw maybe 100 white people. I probably saw maybe for every 30 white people, we saw a black person. But they trying to get into the Smithsonian, into the castle. So it's like, okay, well, they really want to go. Got down to that intersection and realized these people were trying to get inside because they had shut the damn state fair with no animals, state fair with no food, state fair with the little booths that looked like them travelers rest stops you get in Delaware and with little pamphlets and stuff, because it was nobody there. And so we couldn't even get in there. You know what I'm saying? They had put everybody out. And that's who those people were. There was nobody down there. And I may go back down there today just to see. Ain't nobody down there. Wasn't nobody down there. And it's a mess. And you look at those people, some of the people rich because they can afford to come. But I'm looking at people who probably either missed a rent or mortgage payment. I'm looking at little kids. I'm like, you know what? I would feel sorry for y'all if you weren't so damn dangerous. So the best I could do for you is just be quiet. And I had a Wakanda, Lanny Smith, one of them Wakanda baseball caps on from Actively Black, and Harriet Tubman, my National Park Service. I just said, let me be low key, but if you're close enough to read this imaginary country, you'll know that I'm down here looking at your imaginary country. So I might as well put Wakanda on. I'm down here at the United States. They both fictional. So what the hell? But they was trying to get in the air conditioning. But it was a hell of a thing. Oh, I'll show y'all later what I picked up because they was handing out stuff. It was a Christo-fascist / Trump crime family mashup. And he has hijacked it all, bro. That Freedom 250 grift, he didn't he merged it completely with America 250. To see it is mind-blowing.
It's so sad that this is such a we'll never see the next 100 years. Everyone in this listening, maybe some of you, maybe some babies here, but we will never see another 100 years, right? Celebration of a nation's founding. Maybe 50, maybe some of us will be here for the 300. But they had put a $150 million budget to celebrate. This man came in, created a shadow organization, funneled the money into his pocket.
Into his
pocket. And this is what, you got this, which is a trailer park. The Ferris wheel, it's like the worst, most dangerous.
The Ferris wheel is hilarious.
Oh my God.
Nobody was getting on it. It's just
you don't know. You don't know.
No, you don't.
You might die up there.
Don't we know? Don't we?
Yeah, we do know.
Ain't that stupid? You do know. It's Trump. That shit gonna fall. Just like you see that stage, the piece of the stage that fell and the white girls was dancing.
And
I ain't getting on nothing.
The mock-up of the arch, it was peeling.
Oh,
yo,
it's oozing stuff now. I saw that. I mean, I couldn't get over there to it, but you can see the whole thing. It's so net. I wouldn't get on nothing here. Trump built that. Y'all better back up because that shit can really fall.
Yeah.
And the contract for Event Strategies Incorporated, tens of millions of dollars to plan this thing, given to the same company that planned the January 6th rally. They should steal it in your face.
Yeah.
And when confronted, what did J.D. Vance say? He said, well, it's not like Biden, because with the Biden people, they were hiding it. Wait, so your excuse is if you do it in broad daylight.
Yes. Well, apparently, I don't see any revolts. Do you see anybody in the street? But as I was processing this moment, because I don't feel anything, and it's not just like, oh, it's not my country or whatever. It's like, this is America. This is the most America it's ever been, and it's always been this. And I think the way in which we've been propagandized, or the mythology of America that we've all been taught since we were little, is finally like, oh, this has always been cobbled together trailer park. What they didn't have trailer parks back then, but trashy people, posturing, who are violent, gangs who come together to claim things, land, and identity, and and then stick their chest out and stick a flag on it, and then they have to mirror and mock or model, maybe it's mockery, everything else that's been great, because the greatness, you have to manufacture it in real time, real quickly. So you put things together real quickly, so you don't have time for stuff to even turn into something. And now here we are, this 250th year, looking back at the beginning, it's the same. It's the same. Rich people sitting in a room, being horrible and oppressive and put people in bondage, and lying about it, lying about everything, stealing, getting poor people to fight their battles, getting poor people to come to show up. It's how it started. It's how it started.
That's right. And it has continued unabated. I'm always taking a pulse. I'm listening to people, texting with people, talking to people, and the observations have been quite striking. Quite striking. As you say, Prof, please, y'all, what we're not going to do today is go through chapter and verse on the 4th of July. We're at the end of the liberation corridor between Juneteenth and July 4th. The end of that corridor, but the beginning of the work of the rest of the years. I'll talk about in a minute. I thought a lot about this over the last month, prior to, but the last month especially. And today, with a nod toward Ken Burns, I thought it might be interesting to engage in using July 4th, a reset. Nah, I shouldn't say reset, because we've been at this, as you say, for 6 years. Every Saturday. And then now, every day of the week in Knarrative and new. So not a reset as much as a use of this ritual moment, because ritual moments, as we've talked about many times, capture attention in a way that the day before, the day after, the week before, the month after, the year before, the years after don't. But tomorrow is no different. The 5th of July is in many ways much more significant to African people, as you said, Prof, than the 4th of July. So go over to the hub, read that. And there's so many voices, read Mike Harriet and Dr. Van Camp, reading so many of these folks, finished reading Eddie's book, Cloud's book. And it's interesting to even see the Black folk, the American Negro folk, who were, some of them, I think, will retreat to power as soon as it's safe to do that. This isn't a critique, it's an observation. The strong talk now, as Dr. King said, very famously, one of the few quotes that many people are much more familiar with than others, Dr. King said, it isn't where you stand in moments of calm, but in moments of controversy that test your character. This isn't a moment of controversy. It's increasingly less controversial. Talk about Melat Keros in Colorado, the 29-year-old PhD student whose family came here from Ethiopia. She was a baby. who Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas would like to keep out of the country, no doubt. We're going to talk about that case as well. But I'm saying that it's really not controversial now. And it's becoming increasingly less controversial, critical of white nationalists to do as Eddie did, now, MSNBC and CNN, NPR, and call Stephen Miller a white nationalist, a racist. Yeah, you could do that now. For many, as we know, for years, they wouldn't call Donald Trump a liar. Now you can do that. So it's kind of safe now. My question becomes, as all of these things are burned away and the confrontation comes directly in view, how many people are going to keep that base in their voice? I think there will be more and more. But right now, radicalism, so to speak, is comfortable. It is a comfort. But I also think people are finding their voice in the United States and beyond, but in the United States, in a way, finding their voice as social structure conditions, using our Africana states framework, make their previous politics untenable. So the conditions have made it untenable to continue to speak in ways that better. As Black people you watch on TV and they be talking, these commentators, what do you think? Well, I'm thinking of it. Yeah, the political conditions now have made it so that now you can say what you really think. If you've lost your job, shout out to Don Lemon, Joy Reid and others, if you've lost your job, Jim Acosta and Mehdi Hassan, if you've lost your job, it's safe. Because what do you have to lose? And the people are moving in that direction. So now you can say the thing that's on your heart. Again, not questioning, not critiquing, just observing how these rhythms come and go. But as you move in that direction, realize that not only are millions of people already there, so too are millions of people who are already there have already been predisposed to speak truth to power, to live in a fashion that recognizes the reality. And also recognize that there are a handful of people, like Karen Hunters, like the Roland Martins, there are a handful of people who have built spaces to have the unvarnished conversation and have been having it all along, who didn't choose that because they were pushed away, but chose it because self-determination was the space. And even a handful of, veteran teachers, I would count myself in that group, who, because primarily of that mix of curiosity and desire to know, and the blessing of having been brought to adulthood in communities of African people who have spent their entire lives 50 billion infinite toes down in self-determination. So when you hear me, as I've said many times, you hear all those people. And so as folks are finding their voice, what I will not I will invite them to join, but understand, as the joke goes with the French Revolution, as Robespierre is sitting in the cafe and people go to storm the Bastille and he jumps up and people, where you going? He say, hey man, those are my people. I am their leader. No, you don't go to the front of the line and say, follow me, because I'm not convinced that some of y'all are not going to try to crawl right back up in that space if it survives. So, hey, come on, let's do it. But what we're not going to do is say, oh yeah, okay, now what do you think? Yeah, what do you think ain't going to be the way that we move? Amplification in some ways, finally, on this very specific point, before I get into, as we sit here on this ritual, amplification of voices isn't a concession that power makes to say, we're going to go your way. Amplification of voices in many ways is an attempt to curb self-determination efforts, to curb radicalism. If you can absorb it, you can kind of manage it. So, Scott Jennings on cable news network trying to wait out the Ellisons taking over and maybe getting rid of anybody who would get in his way. Abby Phillip getting stronger and stronger in her kind of pushback, because she knows in her heart and her head that, yeah, what he's saying is pure bread bullshit. Well, I think that's necessary and it's important. Well, I won't say it's necessary. It's not necessary. It's important in context. At the same time, let me put a footnote here, because y'all saw the EU has allowed the Paramount merger to go through with some concessions. You know, they want them to spin off the film thing. England is having some reservations. Their leadership and their government is saying, no, maybe we don't approve of the Paramount merger. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens. But now I'm out of the footnote back into what I was about to say. So, you know, ain't nobody watching CNN anyway. More people are looking and listening and being in conversation with what we're doing here than in many of those, what you call legacy science, technology in that way, legacy media. But all that having been said, I think what we're watching now in terms of amplification of voices is an attempt by a social structure which sees itself as teetering to make enough adjustments to maintain some authority. And when it comes to governance formations, who we are to each other using our Africana Studies framework, it would be, I think, smart for us to remember that these all of a sudden, oh, this is so-and-so. Yeah, first of all, there wasn't a revelation. Second of all, glad to have the help because we all need to be moving in the same direction. But having the help don't mean now we give you the stars and bars and make you the general. You're not the general, okay? In fact, we really don't need a general, which leads me back to where we started. Started with Clarence Thomas for the reasons we've discussed. Stalking around.
What you say? Nothing I want to talk to you about. No.
Right before his 91-page dissent in the Birthright Citizenship case, Trump versus Barbara. We're going to get to that. You know, I read this about 3 times. The day before it came out, he's stalking around up there, and the best guess is he was going to see the doctor. 78 years old. I hope you make it to 100, like Mariba Kelsey, or 101, like Mariba Kelsey had birthday, later birthday, 22nd of June. Hey, live a long time. Because the thing you're trying to protect in this absolutely absurd 91-page dissent, which Ketanji Onika Brown Jackson takes apart in 20 pages, which we're going to go through that in a minute. The thing you're trying to protect ain't going to be here much longer. Because the people are moving on. People have never been with it, but more and more people are voicing that, which makes it that much more difficult, which leads me to choosing for us to start with Clarence Thomas. And just before we went on, you all may catch a little bit of it as you hear, as we went live, Prof. You may hear at the end, maybe I end with Zorhan Mamdani. My first thought was, Prof, and we'll start with Zorhan Mamdani, who is modeling what a post mother, father, chiefly father, almost exclusively father when it comes to the United States of America. Didn't have Hillary Clinton, certainly couldn't have Kamala Harris be president, not with this white patriarchy in place, white capitalist patriarchy. But this kind of model of president as father. No, president of the United States doesn't have any power that people don't give him. And Zohran Mamdani, who can not be the president of the United States, according to the Constitution of the United States, unless you change it. And Brett Kavanaugh, in his little whiny boy, Beer Kavanaugh's dissent, posturing as a concurrence, not concurrence. Really, he writes a dissent. We're going to go through his too, which is hilarious to me. It was 6-3. Y'all can count, but you can't count if you don't know how this works. Anyway, let me just
explain that. Please, can you explain that? Because that was I said 5-4.
I saw you talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then then it was like 6-3. All of the newspapers had AP 6-3,
mm-hmm.
And I was, so it was was it confusing on purpose?
Of course. Well, no, it's confusing because people don't either they don't read. They would try to beat each other to the story, or they can read but they don't know what they're reading. Reading for comprehension is very different. I was thinking about that this week, Prof. When I first started with the schools of Philadelphia back in 1999, I remember about 6 months in, I gave a talk to all the principals in the school district entitled Hip Hope. Because everybody wanted to, how do we make this about hip hop generation? How do we get the hip hop generation? I had some experience with that in the classroom. Say, okay, we can talk about, but we need to talk about illiteracy. Illiteracy means you have the ability to read, but you've chosen not to. I said, we got to attack illiteracy. But over this last 27 years, since I started with the school district that many years ago, it's increasingly not illiteracy. It's increasingly illiteracy. They don't have the capacity to read. And just because you can read, even if you can read and you choose to read, if you don't know what you're looking at, then it's better than not reading, but you don't have the comprehension yet. That's why they still got, at least for the foreseeable future, law schools. So let's, I'm gonna hold this up so everybody can see. This is because I like to print stuff out, right? I don't have a 34-year-old blonde who prints out everything for me, and thank God for that. So unlike Donald Trump, who has his, you know, his little assistant who he's with all the time, tongue planted firmly in cheek. But at any rate, I do print things out. This is the opinion of Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh, Supreme Court of the United States. This is the, now y'all look here. I'm sorry, ignore my, scratchings here. I write on stuff. Justice Kavanaugh concurring in the judgment and dissenting in part. Now, concurring, that's the sixth part. So he joins the opinion of John Boyd Roberts, who's trying to preserve his life, having gone too far, his judicial life, having caught the Carr. Amy Coney Barrett, whose politics have basically, as we talked about last week, rendered her a traitor to the white nationalists. And of course, Sotomayor, Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson, and Elena Kagan. And we'll talk about Justice Jackson, who wrote separately to concur in full, but to address Clarence Thomas directly. And it was interesting because Kagan didn't join her in the concurrence. Sotomayor joined her in the concurrence in the introduction and part one only, which I find curious because there's nothing that Brown Jackson wrote in her 20 pages. It seems to me Sotomayor would disagree with, but when you read part two, or everything but part one in the introduction, this is interesting. Because our sister Sonia Sotomayor out of Puerto Rico through the Bronx. So yeah, maybe. Anyway, come to that. But anyway, here's Kavanaugh. Now let's just do a plain language reading.
Before you do that, I just want to underline, because there are too many people out here with platforms who don't know what they're talking about. And instead of saying, I don't know what I'm talking about, let me go find someone who knows what they're talking about, they try to amble through this stuff because they're smart, but they really don't know. And it's misleading to us, which is why we have to be better stewards of finding people to follow who know what they're talking about. So I just want to say thank you, because even smart people may not have the ability to be able to go through those documents with clarity, and you explain things so well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Especially coming from someone for whom your entire life, particularly your adult life, professional life, has been about words. And I know, and I've seen you and heard you, we all have, but I've gotten a chance being up close and personal to see how you will wince at times in the misuse of language. And God bless everybody. We all do it. Like I say, it's not a matter of brain power. Like I say, it's a matter of experience. It's a matter of training, so to speak, although I come sometimes once from that word. And there's a reason, as you say, people with platforms, if people repeat what they heard, they repeat it, well, everybody calm down, or everybody talk. But yeah, I'm convinced that this whole access to everything all the time, everywhere, and then the shadow banning, that, because, we surely shadow ban, and that's fine. I would take that as a compliment. But by the way, that reminds me, hit that like button and share and subscribe, and freak, as you would say, probably freak the algorithm. But yeah, we're up against all of that. Yeah. And just because you can read doesn't mean you're reading with comprehension. And be encouraged by the fact that we have everything we need, as you always say. And we just kind of lean into, if you see it once, you see it twice, you try it then once, you try it twice, you keep trying, you'll get it. I think everybody will get this one, though. This one ain't even a matter of arcane legal theory. Watch this. This is the so-called one of the six, right? Look what he said just in the first paragraph. Executive Order 14160, by the way, that's the one he signed. I was down there, not in the basketball arena in Chinatown, but standing at the Martin Luther King Library as I watched all them people in the hillbilly horde who had spent life savings, who some of them millionaires or rich enough to have a hotel, but they couldn't get in the arena. Remember when Bozo went over there? He started at the White House signing them papers, them executive orders, day one. Then he went over to the arena. Was that the day that his racist friend gave the Nazi salute a couple of times, Elon Musk? But at any rate, I'm standing outside watching these thousands of people in the hillbilly horde freezing their little country asses off because they can't get in. And I'm just standing there watching them laughing. I'm looking at these hillbillies because I want to be able to attest to things I saw. I'm down there in the 1,000,000-degree heat. Yesterday, I was down there in the sub-zero temperatures on the 20th of January watching these fools. And this is one of the executive orders he signed that day. Executive Order 14160 establishes new exceptions to birthright citizenship for children born to foreign citizens unlawfully or temporarily in the country. That was the issue. Let me quickly move to the, just for a second, to the majority opinion. This is what they call the syllabus. The syllabus is a summary of the decision of the case. This is the first page of the case. Trump, President of the United States et al. Versus Barber et al. Certiorari, meaning it's going up to the Supreme Court from the Court of Appeals before judgment to the United States Court of Appeals. The question presented is whether the Constitution guarantees citizenship to children born in the United States of parents who were unlawfully or temporarily present in the country. That's the question. If your baby came out of your womb, but you are not here in the United States legally, or if you're just here temporarily, what they like to call birth tourism, is your child a citizen? Roberts and them decide, yes, it's the plain language of the Constitution. Kavanaugh agrees. It's the plain language of the Constitution. Wait, does he? Does he? Let's go back. Executive Order 14160 establishes new exceptions to birthright citizenship for children born to foreign citizens unlawfully or temporarily in the country. The clue is in the first sentence. Unlawfully or temporarily in the country. That's who they want to exclude now. They're trying to get at the brown people. Ain't that right, Stephen Miller, Pee Wee German? I know you don't like that. That's what they say. Pee Wee German. Don't like it, do you? Light bulb head, MF. 90 federal regulation. I'm not going to go through the statute here. 90 federal regulation. Well, I will. 90 Federal Register 8449-2025. That's where they put the executive orders. It's in this official document. Now, I'm not sure if Bozo would take that down to Mar-a-Lago and put it in his bathroom. Whether that would be legal. I guess in Eileen Cannon's world, the hack who he put on the federal bench to protect him from people like Jack Smith, who's now talking to everybody all the time, saying you got to release this stuff, and I'd prosecute the hell out of him if I could. Who knows? Alito gets read. They push Alito out. Maybe it's Eileen Cannon that gets nominated to the Supreme Court. If you think that these white nationalists wouldn't confirm her, you're not paying attention. So, Executive Order 14160 establishes new exceptions to birthright citizenship for children born to foreign citizens unlawfully or temporarily in the country. The court today holds that the order violates the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. So this holding was it violates the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Roberts violates the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. The traitor, Comey Barrett, it violates the Constitution. Sotomayor Jackson and Kagan, it violates the Constitution. That's 4. Right? Did I say it? Wait, no. Roberts, Comey Barrett, Sotomayor, Kagan, Brown Jackson, 5. Kavanaugh is 6. It violates the 14th Amendment. Wait, no, that's not. Hold on. One more time. Executive Order 14160 establishes new exceptions to birthright citizenship for children born to foreign citizens or unlawfully or temporarily in the country. The court today holds that the order violates the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. I disagree with the court's constitutional holding. And here's where Beer Kavanaugh does what he has done before. He concurs so he can slip the knife in. Remember that scene? For those of you who watch Game of Thrones, when the Night King had Arya Stark up in the air getting ready to crush her, and she slipped that little knife to her other hand and stuck him in the guts and blew him up, and all the White Walkers died. Yeah, in that metaphor, Brett Kavanaugh is Arya Stark. In other words, I got to get in with the majority so I can slip the poison pill in. Here it is. The 14th Amendment. The plain language of the 14th Amendment, if you're born here and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, you are a citizen. Jurisdiction thereof means if you're in the country, you're subject to the laws of the country. Guess what? Who is subject to the laws of the country if they're here? Everybody. Everybody, as Black Thought says in Thought versus Everybody, every damn body is subject, with carve-outs for diplomats. That's why if they hit you in the street, they got diplomatic plates. Hey, man, you go, hey, diplomatic. Damn. And at the time of the 14th Amendment, indigenous people, something cured by the Act of 1924, extending citizenship to them. So there are carve-out exceptions. But everybody else, well, anyway, I'm gonna get into that because Kavanaugh identifies 4 categories as identified in the Kim Wan Ark case, which everybody's been talking about, the Chinese case, because these people are anti-Chinese, they anti-Roma, they anti really everybody they can get out of the country. But here the point is very simple. He's disagreeing with the plain language of the 14th Amendment, which is what people repeating who haven't really read this or don't understand for comprehension think that he's with them. No, he disagrees on that. Where he disagrees, let's let him write it. He says, I respectfully disagree with the court's constitutional holding. Remember in constitutional amendments or constitutional amendments, there's a section in the amendments that says Congress has the ability to pass laws which execute the amendment. Voting Rights Act of 1965 is pursuant to the plain language of the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution. 15th Amendment says if there's going to be an election, whatever, right to vote, it's not abridged by race. Okay. So then they passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which is the second major piece of federal legislation to kind of uphold or shore up or allow for the implementation of that constitutional amendment. First one, you see Civil Rights Act of 1957, and then there's subsequent Civil Rights Act in 1960, 1964, which kind of also want to give protections in terms of voting. But the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the one that Baines Johnson signed, the one whose anniversary we just passed almost without comment. We talked about it. I'll talk about it on Urban View. That was pursuant largely to the 14th Amendment, equal protection, due process, all that. But if you pass a federal law, that's not a constitutional amendment. It's a law which is explaining, protecting, extending, amplifying the plain language of the amendment is pursuant to. Right? It's like somebody coming to your house and you think of a good metaphor and saying the law in this house is everybody take their shoes off. Then you pass a law pursuant to that law in your house that says everybody take their shoes off means take your shoes off, but you can keep your socks on. Or everybody coming in the house means you got to take your socks and your shoe and your shoes off. In other words, you're passing pursuant to the major law. And then people fight it. Kavanaugh says the major law, no. That executive order saying that you can't handle, if you have a baby here, but you here illegally, your baby not a citizen. He said, that's okay. Oh yeah, that's okay. The problem, as we come here to it, he says, I respectfully disagree with the court's constitutional holding, the constitutional amendment. You see, constitutional. He says, I respectfully disagree with the court's constitutional holding. In my view, the executive order does not violate the 14th Amendment. Yikes. There's the 4th vote with them racists. Beer, and your Stark. Anyway, but the order does contravene a federal statute, 8 U.S. Code Section 1401A. That's what they call the immigration, and that's why I put in my note. The immigrant, I didn't even know I was going to do this for y'all, but now we see. The Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1952, that is in the statute at Section 1401A of United States Code, Section 8, Title 8, rather. Congress could, consistent with the 14th Amendment, amend 1401A or otherwise enact new legislation establishing exceptions to birthright citizenship for children born to foreign citizens unlawfully or temporarily in the country. But Congress has not yet done so. To make this plain language, this is what Beer's saying. Bozo signed that racist ass executive order. It don't violate the Constitution. It violates the law that y'all wrote pursuant to the 14th Amendment. But you can always change the law. He's trying to stop winter from coming. But guess what, Bozo? I'm sorry. Guess what, Beer? It's coming. Now watch this. I'm going to go a little further and then we're going to keep going. Let me see here. What do I have? What do I have here? Okay, because I don't want to get my pages mixed up because it's like 200 pages of reading. Watch this. This is the end of it. I ain't going to go through his reasoning because it's bullshit, but here you go. because, I'm sorry, let me make this point. The language of the Immigration and Naturalization Act in terms of who can come here and birthright citizenship and every baby born here, subject to jurisdiction is a citizen, is the exact language of the 14th Amendment. For the interest of time, we won't go through how he twists himself into knots to say, well, this is exact language, but it don't mean the same thing. They got this hung up with domicile and with loyalty, this kind of thing. But look, this is how you know, like the hit dog hollers the guilty person, because he know people reading this going to say, oh, you just trying to get them to pass this racist law. So what does it say at the very end? Which in many ways, if you got a 5-year-old who's ever said something, and as Shakespeare might say, verily thou doth protest too much. In other words, who ate all the milk? Who drank all the milk? Who had all the cookies? I didn't. And then later on, Mom, I did not. No, the cookies was gone, but I like repeating. But you already said at the beginning that. Why are you saying it again? Watch the last paragraph of his short 10-page concurrence, dissent, hiding as a concurrence. This is what he said. He says, for those reasons, to reiterate, the executive order does not violate the 14th Amendment. He would have been with them other ones on that. But the order does contravene 8 U.S. Code 14018, Section 14018. Consistent with the 14th Amendment, Congress could amend Section 14018 or otherwise enact new legislation establishing exceptions to birthright citizenship for children born to foreign citizens unlawfully or temporarily in the country, but Congress has not yet done so. Now I'm asking questions here. Anyway, what did I write here? Because the 14th Amendment can be evaded with more exceptions unanticipated by the authors, John Boy, no, the underlying value is uncertainty. He's trying to introduce uncertainty, but that's not actually what I wanted to read. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see. That's page 9. That's page 10. He says, all that said is noted above, Congress 1940-52, if Congress amends, this is a lesson you learned your first day in law school, y'all. If you want to see important stuff, it isn't just the body, it's the footnotes. Look what this boy says in footnote 7 at the end, the last footnote in his short opinion. Look what he said. Nothing in this opinion is intended to suggest how birthright citizenship should be addressed as a policy matter. I said, see, liar. He's a liar. You lying. You stuck that in a footnote. Oh, I'm not suggesting what you should do. You gave up the roadmap. Come on, Anya Stark. Except you ain't Anya Stark, and we ain't the White King. And stabbing us in the ribs is just gonna make us mad. It ain't gonna kill the White Walkers. My point is this: for those who didn't watch Game of Thrones or read the books, don't even worry about it. What I'm saying is this: Kevin are trying to be sneaky, not like a dry snitch, or he trying to be sneaky. It ain't work, beer. So when people say 6-3, read the opinion. You can read it for yourself. Work through it. You'll see that what he's trying to do is tell them, just change the law. But in order to change the law, they got to have the majority in both houses and the presidency, and got to have a 60-vote majority in the Senate. In order to do that, they're going to have to steal the election because the people is coming out here going to break their political backs. And in order to do that, they got to either pass a SAVE Act or loose all the feds in the street and hope that they intimidate y'all. And in order to do that, they're going to have to run up over all the policy and all the law as it's set today. And in order to do that, they got to get the mindset in the people, among the people, to either be like, we support you, or we're so apathetic, we don't care. So for all the voting doesn't matter, people, I just read to you. The man is telling them, look, in order to do this, you got to change the law. But in order to change the law, you got to have the people in this place. In order to have the people in place, you're going to have to cheat. This is why they're so desperate. And if you looked at what happened in the immediate wake of this opinion being released on Tuesday, all the stuff they had lined up to release, win or lose, and they had hoped to win, which is why Miller was out there talking with his head lapsed over to the side, old heavy light bulb head, and Junior Varsity Vance out there was 5-4. We're close. Stephen Miller, it was close. So, all we have to do is, it's been my history. It's been my opinion, American history. When you're close and it's only one vote, you can, we're on the verge of victory. He ain't entirely wrong. But hey, y'all go out there and stay on the bench and don't vote for Tallarico because you got some hurt feelings if you want to. No, I ain't going to say that. Why? Because you're going to put me in harm's way. and my niece and nephew and brother and sister, you're going to put Karen in harm's way and her family and her mama. You're going to put us all in harm's way because you got some hurt feelings. Don't get mad, get smart, as John Clark would say. But I would say, don't stay mad as hell, and do something about it that you can do in the living present, in the now, act now in the living present, as Martin Delaney was saying there, right quick, Larry Crow, as he would say. All right, so let me not mix these pages because I'm going to come back now, because between last Saturday and this Saturday, what I said was we were going to kind of do a setting of how we should be thinking about 250, or at least a suggestion. I don't like to give direction. And so I will, mindful of the time. At the same time, we knew this opinion was coming down. So I knew that, well, we all knew that this would color some of what we're talking about today. So I haven't gotten to what I mapped out for today, but in many ways I have. And so the challenge for me over the last 7 days, not even 7 days, because the opinion came out Tuesday, the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the last 5 days between Tuesday and today was to think about what was written, having not seen any word of it in the context of what we've been doing now for 6+ years, and in particular the corridor between Juneteenth and July 4th, and how that would fit. And actually it fits perfectly, because what we saw, notice so far I've talked about Kavanaugh a little bit, which was important. Haven't talked about John Roberts' majority opinion, which isn't very long at all. Roberts, the opinion of the court, as it is called, the majority opinion, was, let me see, it was 26 pages. And then comes Ketanji Onyeka. This is the syllabus. Notice what I put up at the top. Genealogy of Europe, England. CF, the underlying cultural sensibility. CF means contrafactual. In other words, check this out, because it's in contradiction of this. What they rely on in the majority opinion, the question presented is whether the Constitution guarantees citizenship to children born in the United States of parents who are unlawfully or temporarily present in the country. Under the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment, quote, all people born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside, end quote. If you heard Mayor Mamdani, who cannot run for president because he's not a native-born citizen of the United States, say, as he was surrounded with a beautiful tapestry of human beings who are now citizens, been brought in like him, naturalized, they were not born here. He said, sitting behind the mayor's desk in New York City on the 3rd of July, much to the consternation of the white nationalists, which is chef's kiss delicious to hear them rant and rave, these racists, whose own grandparents and great-grandparents weren't here either. When he said, these people you see here with me today with these flags, they now have the feeling that I had 10 years ago. Wait, what's that? He said, when I was no longer just a New Yorker, but an American. Oh, he was trolling this. My man, Mom Donnie, brother, I ain't mad at you. I ain't mad at you. It's going to take all of us in New York City to not push him to make him do the right thing, because he wanted to do the right thing, but to surround him and protect him as he does it. That means the politicians you've elected, the policymakers that are in place. That means the people organizing in communities, organizing in polities, organizing in small groups to execute and to push, to extend the things. In other words, to surround him, because they're coming from him. The Bill Ackman, you lost yesterday, punk. I mean, you lost Tuesday, punk. The billionaire who went after Claudine Gay, herself coming from people from Haiti. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you want all these people out, and you want Mom Donnie. You're not gonna get Mom Donnie if we do what we need to do, which is not just surround him in terms of decisions he makes, but empower the decisions that he is making by pushing even further wherever we live in that great polity of 5 boroughs called New York and beyond greater New York. Because when you see him, when you see the sister, as I say, Quiroz in Colorado, when you see Chris Rabb, that you've talked with Prof in Philadelphia, when you see it ain't just New York, that's what the mass commercial news entertainment media is trying to get people to, no, that's not going to happen. You have to understand that. This sister in Colorado, just like the sister that Mamdani backed, the Afro-Dominican in New York, who took out the current chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, they both 29 years old. This is important, but it isn't just youth. It isn't just those who are a little older, but still not at the seasoned age. like our good sister Yanni Presley out of Boston, who read into the record yesterday, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" from the floor of the United States House of Representatives. Like the good sister Summer Lee out of Western Pennsylvania, who has been doing it. They're a little older than these two sisters I'm talking about now, but they're not into the age where I am. But some of these people, these are all, these are all arduous friends. So, what I'm saying? I mean, they have that, but I'm saying you got to surround them with the work that goes on, regardless of what you've done at the ballot box or not. That's what enables them with the power. But when Mamdani said, I'm surrounded by these people who now have the feeling that I had 10 years ago. Remember, Zohar Kwame Mamdani was born in Uganda. He was naturalized as an American citizen. And then we said, no longer just a New Yorker, but an American. I'm like, look at that. Dred Scott, which Clarence Thomas, anyway, I'll get to Clarence Thomas in a minute, because Ketanji takes him to task on that. Dred Scott, which said Roger Taney, that racist, Chief Justice of the United States, 1857, which finds a lot of play in all these pages. Dred Scott, which Clarence Thomas tries to say in his dissent, meant that the 14th Amendment was only supposed to apply to us, those descended of those who were trafficked. And this is where the ADOS people get tripped up. I've seen a few of them online saying, see, Clarence Thomas was right. It only applies to us. Lost your damn mind. Ketanji Brown Jackson, she eviscerates that immediately. She said, no, she gave a metaphor. She said, so if you got a class and one child is beating up another child, the teacher don't come in and say, pass a rule or chastise the student or stop them and say, in the future, don't hit that one child anymore. No, the teacher says, you stop hitting everybody. She said, that's the metaphor for the 14th Amendment. Yes, the prompt was the Civil War. Yes, the prompt was our self-determination efforts. But pursuant to those efforts, Ketanji Monique Brown Jackson says, now the rule is everybody born here is a citizen. Not just Black people. Clarence, what you doing?
Nothing I want to tell you.
Come on, bro. But at any rate, to the point I'm making, Mamdani said, not just a New Yorker. So why did you say that? Because Roger Taney said that Black people are not citizens. And in order to be a citizen, you got to be a citizen of the United States and of the state in which you reside. And since Dred Scott was in a slave state, he's not a citizen. And in fact, you can't be a citizen if you're Black anywhere. So all you 500,000 African people who have some form of freedom in the slave South, y'all not free either, because your condition follows you because of your race, your wretchedness, the thing they said they fixed in the 14th Amendment. Although my man Attorney Donald Temple would say that the Dred Scott thing is still good law, because in the 13th Amendment, they say slavery or involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime of which the person has been legally or dutifully convicted, should not exist. So in other words, they shrunk it, but they didn't get rid of it. It's interesting. But at any rate, I don't get to, because now I'm thinking I'm starting to sound professorial, like I'm sitting there with my students over at the law school at Howard, and I don't want to do that. It's, stay on track on what we came here to do today. But all this will tie together, we'll tie it together. The point I'm making here is that when Mamdani says, not, they feel how I feel now, not just a New Yorker, but an American. I'm like, why are you making the distinction between a New Yorker? Is it every New Yorker an American? No, they're not. But boy, you remember Robert De Niro and Analyze This? I see you, or I see you, like Meet the Fockers. I see you, I see you, Zoran, because every New Yorker is not a U.S. citizen. But the 14th Amendment says that all persons are eligible for due process under law. In fact, let me take these out while we're not on together properly, because I like to be able to speak directly without these. And sometimes
Nope. Yeah.
There we are. Okay, there we are. So, all right. So when Mamdani said that, he's not making the same distinction that Roger Taney was making in 1857 with Dred Scott, but it's almost like a gesture. Let me tell you how I interpret it. And I think it's a valid interpretation. We can agree to disagree, but I prefer we agree to agree. When you say New Yorker, that's a much bigger category of human beings than American, which is a narrower definition. The 14th Amendment extends birthright citizenship to those born here, with a small exception, diplomats, at that time Native Americans, which they fixed. But understand that citizenship is a civil right. Being a human being in the world is a human right. And one of the things that I think Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson points out, because she's kind of, in many ways, like any other American judge, U.S. judge, not America's whole hemisphere, U.S. judge, one thing she's trapped by is the shrinking of human rights to civil rights, which the 14th Amendment doesn't do. It does in terms of birthright citizenship. It doesn't do in terms of due process and equal protection. In fact, I've done this before, but let's do it now because I'm talking about the 14th Amendment. And again, I keep a copy of the Constitution here, right here on the. Let me see here. Let me go here. We're having that conversation with my Supreme School students about the 9th Amendment, which is another conversation. Let me go to 13. Let me go to 14. All right. Let's go to this. Now I'm gonna go. Here we are. Here we are. It's the 14th Amendment, the United States Constitution, proposed June 13th, 1866, ratified July 9th, 1868. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of, was what they were fighting over, which there shouldn't have been no fight, should have been 9-0, as we were talking about last Monday, probably, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. They're the two types. That's the fix to Dred Scott. Citizen of the United States and citizen of the state in which they reside. Okay. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. They are citizens, but watch this. Nor shall any state deprive any person, doesn't say citizen. Isn't it interesting how that lined up? You see citizen over here, and just below it, you see persons. Civil rights, human rights. Civil rights, human rights. Nor shall any state deprive any person, human rights, of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person, not citizen, person within its jurisdiction, the equal protection of the laws. They fight over that a lot. The racists will say person means citizens, but the plain language readers of the Constitution will then respond and say, hey, man, I thought y'all like originalism. I thought y'all like plain language. Oh, man, Ketanji, Justice Jackson, she lit up. Let me just go to it. She lit Clarence up on this very thing. Watch this. I'm just going to start right here. This is Ketanji Brown Jackson, with whom Justice Sotomayor joins as to the introduction in part 1, concurring. She says, I join the court's opinion in full. But she says, I write separately to get with my mans. This black on black violence, which is why I think it fits perfectly what I was going to do anyway. Says, I write separately to respond to some of the themes in the principal dissent, meaning there were several dissents. Gorsuch, Alito, racist ass, and Clarence Thomas, who spends not 24 pages like the majority opinion, not 20 pages like Ketanji Brown Jackson, not 10 pages like Kavanaugh, or the shorter opinions. I think Gorsuch was 2 or 3 pages. I have to go back and look. Or Alito, 91 pages this Tom spends trying to contort himself into, trying to, watch this. She said, despite his long-standing endorsement of a, quote, colorblind constitution, Justice Thomas now surprisingly suggests that the Citizenship Clause was a race-conscious remedial measure relating only to freed slaves such as Dred Scott and those who shared with them certain characteristics. No other homeland. That's what she says. Post, that means it's coming after me. Page 21, column American. It is for this reason, he says, that children who were born in the United States but to parents not domiciled here, this is a distinction without a difference. And Roberts deals with that, are not entitled to claim birthright citizenship. But that narrow vision of the 14th Amendment bears little relationship to the history of its ratification. Even worse, Justice Thomas, and they put everybody, this isn't an all caps social media screed. You put the names of the justices that you quote in all caps. So this isn't just Justice Thomas. No. Even worse, Justice Thomas is telling elides the entire point of the second founding. Look what she said, not Reconstruction. She says the second founding, the Reconstruction amendments were an anti-caste. And she quotes, I've seen Isabel Wilkerson on all the shows because she quotes caste. She quotes my friend Martha Jones up at Johns Hopkins on Birthright Citizenship. She quotes, of course, was it David Bryan Davis? No, Roberts quoted David Bryan Davis. And she quoted Kenneth Stamp. I'm gonna get into that maybe. Maybe we had to do this maybe in a special office hours. I don't want to get too deep into that because some of the quotes I was like, But at any rate, even worse, Justice Thomas is telling elides the entire point of the second founding, the Reconstruction amendments, were an anti-caste, anti-subordination reset for the nation, not a mere spot treatment for the dark stain of slavery. He's like, man, why are you trying to shrink the 14th Amendment to black people? It's a plain language. You know damn well that's not what it was. But before I go any further, let me, I don't want to get too, see, this is what I'll do. All right, let me see. This is the majority opinion. That's Justice Jackson, first page. But watch this. I'm not going to get into, yeah, I'll finish. Look what she says. Also, true is the fact that this court has time and again denied Americans that promise, the promise they extended to black people. But consensus about the 14th Amendment's central motivation does not justify Justice Thomas's myopic treatment of it. The amendment caused a paradigm shift in the trajectory of our nation. The teacher who holds a student, here's what I was talking about. The teacher who scolds a student for bullying a classmate hopes the student learns the broader lesson of treating everyone with kindness, not just that one kid. I love how she's put it. Now, kid, people say that's a little colloquial. You shouldn't say kid, say child. She's doing this on purpose, I think. Her writing is accessible writing. Watch what she does in this next paragraph. I laughed out loud when I read this the first time. She says, in the aftermath of the Civil War, those who championed the 14th Amendment, both within and beyond the Congress, here it comes, understood the assignment. Now, you know damn well, it's the first time in the history of American jurisprudence a Supreme Court justice used a colloquial phrase. Understood the assignment. Their work product used, quote, language that transcended race and region, end quote, and thereby changed and broadened the meaning of freedom for all Americans, end quote. Instead of the limited salve the principal dissent makes it out to be, principal dissent meaning not them little dissents, but you the big boy, I'm taking you on, Clarence, plus you black. I don't think that in play in it. Not paying attention. The Citizenship Clause reflects this universalist approach. But I want to go to the first footnote. She says that y'all been denying us these rights. Watch what she does in the footnote. Again, the footnote be having the stuff. I say KOBJ, the litany of denied promises. Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson. Watch this. She said, I suspect, though, that Justice Thomas and I disagree about when and how that promise has been denied by this court. My list is long and sadly only getting longer. For a sampling, consider civil rights cases: Plessy versus Ferguson, DeLima versus Bidwell, otherwise known as the Insular cases, Downs versus Bidwell, Korematsu versus United States, Milliken versus Bradley, McCleskey versus Kemp, parents involved in community schools versus Seattle School District Number 1, Shelby County versus Holder, Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus President and Fellows of Harvard College, Louisiana versus Calais. She said, I got a long list of ways they screwed us, including you, my friend, and the list getting longer because you steady trying to keep doing stuff. That was voting rights, that was education, that Milliken versus Bradley, you're talking about integration and busing. I mean, Korematsu, of course, the Japanese internment case, parents involved in community schools, that's the voluntary desegregation case out of Louisville and Seattle. There was a Seattle and Louisville cases. I ain't mad at you, sis. I just wish that Barack had nominated you instead of Merrick Garland, because if he had, and Hillary Clinton had come on the campaign trail and said, now when I'm elected, I'm gonna put her back up for nomination and we're gonna get her, we wouldn't be in this mess, I don't think. But that's all right. Y'all enjoyed it about presidential center. Point is this, y'all know I couldn't resist. I know y'all be mad, but don't get mad. Or stay mad, but be smart. All right, the point is this. And I could go on. But the reason I'm bringing all this up is because this became, and by the way, let me just say this about Justice Jackson and what she's doing here. In her 20-page concurrence, what Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson does is give a history of the United States and citizenship and the role of Africans in it. I'll come back to that in a moment, but I want to pause here just to level set it before we go forward to think about the fact that here on July 4th, a moment when the United States of America recognizes a birthday that you weren't a part of, most of y'all. In fact, none of you were a part of it because you weren't alive back then. But people of African descent were definitely not a part of it for some of the reasons we've kind of mentioned. It is important to understand that if you are doing this, if you are breathing, you are part of a human community that is part of a larger community of living things. And that there should be some protections that accrue to you regardless of where you walk on the world, in the world. Then put a footnote here. Now y'all can probably understand when I say put a footnote, if you didn't before, and we've done this. I don't know if we've ever shown printed pages of a case opinion, but now that you see that, the aesthetic of footnotes, which I really encourage students, say, well, you know, how do you want citation style? I said, I would love for y'all to use footnotes. You can do what you want because I know y'all haven't been trained to use footnotes, but I love footnotes because that's where a lot of stuff comes out. But when I say footnote, that means it's pursuant to something I'm saying, but I don't want to take away from what I'm saying in the main conversation we're having. But I want to put a footnote here to say one of the things that came to mind as I was thinking about this was the question of those who have more than one passport. Because what Clarence Thomas and Alito, Gorsuch, particularly Clarence Thomas, is obsessed with, Alito absolutely is a pure red racist, he is this notion of divided allegiance. If you were born here, but your mom and daddy were here illegally, that means that they're citizens of another country and they have divided allegiance and they're not domiciled here. Or if they came here for a visit and are going back where they came from, that's where they're loyal to. So if you were born here, you shouldn't be a citizen automatically. And Bear Kavanaugh's like, yeah, I ain't gonna say I agree with you. I put in a footnote that I'm not telling y'all what y'all should do, but then in the main body, I'm telling y'all what y'all should do. You should change the law and put that in there if you want it. Because the 14th Amendment is cool with it. It's the policy in the Immigration and Nationalization Act of 1952 that you got to change. So I concur. No, you don't, MF. But the point is this. The footnote I'm in, I'm thinking, what about people who have more than one passport? Do all of my Nigerian friends and their children who were born here, but who can also get Nigerian passports, do they have dual loyalty? Oh, this is what they call in the law, the slippery slope. Because if you don't think for a minute, a hot minute, if you don't think for 3 seconds, this is where they're going. See, what they would love to have is loyalty tests. So if you got 2 passports, U.S. Nigeria, U.S. Israel, U.S. Wait. If you got a passport for a country they ain't rocking with, maybe they ask you, are you loyal to this country or Ghana? Right, Hodge? Hodge got a couple of passports. It ain't no secret. I tell all my students at Howard and at every HBCU I'm at, and everywhere I see, when I see somebody with a name that leads me to believe that perhaps their people are from somewhere else, a Campbell or a Clark, which might mean Jamaica, right? A Frederick, which might mean Trinidad and Tobago. A Gonzalez, which might mean, could mean not Puerto Rico, because that's a colony of the United States of America, but Dominican Republic or Colombia. If you are able to get more than one passport, or any of them names that start with an O or an I and got 3 or 4 syllables in them, which means Igbo, Yoruba, hey, if you can get more than one passport, because you can get a Caribbean passport. I was talking about that with our sister the other day, Dr. Ahmed. You know, her people, she got people in Cuba, she got people in Jamaica, and you get a passport in the Commonwealth countries, you can get a passport to England up to a certain point. It's like, oh my. But watch this. Are these white nativists going to come along, and the Negroes who love them, I'm not going to tell you about that, where I'm going to meet. Are they going to get to the point where they say, hey, this divided loyalty thing, I know you domiciled here, but where's your loyalty? I'm telling you, this is where they're going. But they ain't got to get there. They won't get there, certainly when we break their political backs out of the footnote back into the conversation we're having here. Here on July 4th, and now I want to kind of set it. You know, we're at the 250th anniversary of this criminal enterprise. And y'all know why I call it the criminal enterprise. Because these people were human traffickers. And I do not admire them. You know, the 44th president of the United States of America said that, you know, he can admire George Washington and still look at his flaws. More than a flaw, bruh. I thought to myself, if you had been human trafficked to Mount Vernon or at the president's house in Philly, where shout out to Michael Cord and the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition at 1:00 today, they will be having a rally and an informational and a protest at the president's house right there on the corner of 5th and Market across from Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell. I wish I could be there with you, Mike. Love you, brother. And I always have, my man. I wish I could be there. But if Barack Obama had been trafficked to Mount Vernon here in Virginia or up there in Philly, would you have admired George Washington while you were planting his crops, while he was taking your father's teeth out and putting it in his mouth? Would you have admired him then? As people were trying to escape, would you have told on the judge or Joe? Would you have told on Hercules? Would you have told on those Africans whose names are chiseled into the monument at 5th and Market? Would you have told on them, or would you have remained silent? Would you have helped them? Would you have been quiet? I don't know. When you say admiration, I'm assuming you mean admiration for some of the ideas that he espoused, certainly not for the man himself. If you mean the man himself, bruh, that's another kind of conversation. But again, I'm not mad at you. I don't like you. I don't dislike you. You're a politician. He had some style. Y'all did some things that inspired Black people and others, and that's a beautiful thing. But let me be crystal clear about this. To say you admire George Washington with all his flaws, one of his flaws was your ass was in a field with your shirt off and somebody over there getting raped and somebody else getting their foot cut off on the judge, and Hercules was like, deuces, the hell out of here. I'm out. And Washington writing up there to New England talking about come back. She writing like, you gonna let my children go? And me too. If not, I'll see you in the other life. Actually, I won't, because you and me not going to the same place. As the United States notes.
Wait. The Ken Burns documentary points out that had Great Britain just given Washington his just desserts, his accolades, so basically the Revolutionary War is somebody revenge mad because they didn't get acknowledged.
Come on, Prof. That's why I say, I mean, people beat us up sometimes. They certainly beat me up and say, well, you get too much credit to Ken Burns. I don't give Ken Burns no credit. Go back and listen. I'm civil because I'm a human being. I ain't gonna let nobody take my humanity. And, the gotcha kind of thing, that's not what I do. I'm gonna ask you a question that's like a gotcha question, but because we're entering in a different kind of way, it's important for people to answer the question you're asking to get to this other thing rather than it is to just be like, and I'm so glad you said that, Prof, because it makes the point we started with when it comes to Ken Burns. He's being honest to the point where he's curious. He's trying to satisfy curiosity. He got a story he want to tell. He's an American exceptionalist. But he can't keep that lie up if he's being honesty and American exceptionalism do not fit, which is why when Zoran Mamdani started his speech this week with, what American exceptionalism is? It isn't that we're better than everybody else. It's that everybody gets to come here and do what they can. It's the people who catch the early bus. My man, he gets me every time with that early bus, boy, because my daddy didn't have a car. He walked to work in West Nashville from South Nashville. So when he talks about that early bus, I started to say something else in the United States, but I ain't got to say it because I was watching it yesterday. Y'all could all go to hell. What Zoran Mamdani says, exceptionalism is when those who have been under the most pressure not only survive anyway, but make a place better than when they found it. And so you're absolutely right, Prof. Burns cannot continue to define American exceptionalism in the way that he might have started out and confront those truths he's been looking for. And you're exactly right. In that notion, had they made peace, remember, it's the British, and Burns talks about this. Vincent Brown, I see Brown just left Harvard, went to Yale. Congratulations, brother, who writes about a lot of this stuff. Christopher, what's Christopher's last name? I think his name is Brown too. At any rate, they sent George Washington out to the Ohio Valley to tell the French to get the hell out of there. That's the French and Indian War. That's Fort Duquesne and what is now near Pittsburgh. In other words, he was a loyal subject of the crown. You're absolutely right, Prof. Burns, I can't make the man what you want him to be. I would love Barack Obama to appear in Burns's next documentary, which is on Reconstruction, except I want him to talk about Lincoln without the myth making. And unfortunately, our sister, Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson, is interested in the people she doesn't quote. I might as well do that now, and then I'll keep going. Let me see. What did I do with Justice Brown Jackson here? Kim One Ark, that's Kavanaugh. See what happens. I've been going back and forth. Oh, yeah, here we go. The concurrent. In her concurrence, there are people she cites, but when you know the literature and you read a whole lot, you can see who she don't cite. She gives Lincoln a lot of credit. And I understand. Watch this. Here, it's in footnote 11. She quotes my friend Martha Jones, Birthright Citizenship. Here, she says, interestingly, Lincoln held a universalist view of citizenship despite his support for the colonization movement. See infra at 10 and 11. She quotes Lincoln up here, your race are suffering, in my judgment, the greatest wrong inflicted on any people. But even when you cease to be slaves, you are yet far removed from being placed on an equality with the white race. Colonization would allow free blacks to thrive without forcing whites to accommodate their demands for equal treatment and legal protection. Lincoln wants y'all ass out of the United States. He freed you in part, kept you captive in part in places like Maryland before the 13th Amendment because he was trying to win the war. Remember J.C. Fremont, we've talked about this. Fremont, who was commanding the armies of the West, said, free them all, give them guns, we end this thing quickly. Lincoln rescinded those orders. In South Carolina, when Sherman and them boys coming down, and before him, Rufus Sexton and them was giving out land and saying 40 acres and a mule, Lincoln rescinded those orders. Remember, they sent General Oliver Otis Howard, that Howard, in to tell these boys, y'all can't have the land. Lincoln's no hero. My man Lerone Bennett Jr. forced into glory, which is she incite Lerone Bennett, and then even here where she quotes him on saying, "Y'all not gonna be equal here, so I'll send you out." And yet and still, in that same sentence I just read, is you trying to rehabilitate Lincoln. Interestingly, Lincoln held a universalist view of citizenship despite his support for the colonization movement. Is it a universalist sense of citizenship if you ain't here to be a citizen? Come on, Justice Jackson. I'm not mad at you, sis, because I understand you got to hold on to that aspiration. I don't agree with it politically. I think it is an absurd reading historically and factually, but I absolutely understand the underlying sentiment in the words of Rodney King to answer the question, can't we all just get along? I absolutely understand. I respect it. And I pray hopefully one day will be that case. But you can't do that from a position of weakness. But I do understand it. There is no Lerone Bennett quoted here, and I can understand that because she's relying heavily on an amicus brief filed by Martha Jones and her stalwart scholarly comrades. An amicus brief is a brief that people filed at the Supreme Court when they are not a plaintiff, not a defendant in the case, but they have an opinion that they think should be shared. And look at what she says at the end. I'm just going to go to the end for a moment. She says, of course, the ultimate irony is that for all the talk about the detestable Dred Scott decision, the government and the principal dissent propose a return to its core tenet. Meaning what? Well, let me go. He says, their bottom line is that for certain people, being born on American soil will not suffice to confer citizenship. See, it is that odious conclusion that the Citizenship Clause plainly rejects, as the court explains. Anti, meaning what I've written before. Anti, meaning the last page of John Roberts' majority opinion on page 26 of his opinion. Anti means before. Post means after. So Clarence Thomas coming after her. That's why she was citing post. And then anti means what came before her, which is page 26 of John Roberts' opinion. She says, I add only that the 14th Amendment's universalist aims, meaning everybody, should forever be the death knell for this kind of claim. One that seeks to make bloodline the marker of birthright. Ooh, y'all remember, Prof, you remember when they was in Charlottesville? Blood and soil, blood and soil. This is insidious. What these dissenters, Clarence Thomas, do, first and foremost, they try to separate, they try to take that conjunction and out, turn it into an or, and claim blood, not soil. Birthright citizenship would make it pursuant to soil. Where did you come out your mama's womb? You're a citizen. What these MFs is saying, it's blood. Who you're loyal to. Remember them Chinese after 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act? Yeah, you was born here, but are you loyal to the United States? Your mom and daddy came from China. Which is what led to the Kim Wong-Ark Supreme Court decision in the first place in the 1890s. Why? Because Kim Wong-Ark's parents came here, West Coast, and the boy was born here, birthright citizen. But what they saying, what the dissent here, what Beer Kavanaugh, what Thomas is saying, Alito, what they're saying, and Gorsuch, what they're saying is, yeah, but in the case of Kim Wong-Ark, they didn't intend on going back. So they'd established domicile. What Ketanji Brown Jackson and what John Roberts and the majority is saying is, it don't matter. They were born here. You want to go with blood. How blood get into it? Watch this. If it was blood, y'all wouldn't have voted for Kennedy because you said his Lord and Master was the Pope because he was Catholic. Woo, let's get ugly with this. If it was blood, because what Clarence Thomas says is the reason that Negroes got citizenship in the 14th Amendment is because they ain't had no place else to go. They was born here. They have no loyalty to another place. In other words, we came into the imagination of the United States legal universe as naked in chains, talking about give us free. I reject that. So when I wear red, black, and green, or when I put on a Ghana jersey, go Ghana, keep going, y'all. We counting on y'all. When I wear a Cabo Verde, a Cape Verde jersey, and they almost won yesterday, when I'm rocking Senegal or Haiti, do I have divided loyalties? In your world, you might not think so, but I know that your racist friends do. Hell, you might yourself. And therefore, blood, if you put blood in front of soil, hell, you can disqualify a whole lot of people. That is the fever dream of Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller. That is the fever dream of nasty piece of work, Russell Vogt. That is the fever dream of Kevin Roberts and the Heritage Foundation to make it about blood. And guess what? If you're going to go by blood, we got a problem. See, Zoran Mamdani never going to be president of the United States because by the Constitution, he got to be born here. Naturalized doesn't cut it. And guess what? You know who embraces that probably as much or more than anybody? Let me think. Who am I thinking about? Zoran Kwame Mamdani. See, y'all can't get mad at him and say, well, he has aspirations to be president. No, I don't. I have aspirations to be the mayor of the world. I'm sorry, you call it New York City. And until 10 years ago, I was a human in the world. Now I'm also a citizen. Along with the rest of these people behind me waving flags. What we gonna do? And the New York Times this morning, just to cover the time. One nation, many Americas. I'm like, yo, what y'all doing, boy? Just because this is the New York Times. What's the running? I saw a joke on social media last week when Maggie Haberman's book came out and Jonathan Chait, he said, what did it say? It said, it takes 2 minutes for a message to reach from the moon to reach Earth. It takes 20 minutes or whatever for a message from Jupiter to reach the Earth. How long does it take a message from the reporters of the New York Times to reach the reading public? Yeah, 6 months to a year. Meaning what? Maggie, Jonathan, y'all sat on all them stories you put in your book for 6 months, a year. Then you put the book out to make money. At least you didn't put it out in December after the midterms. So I give you credit for that. But the New York Times even is shifting. You think this would have been the headline? One nation, many Americas. Here's where I would correct it. The United States is not a nation. It's a country. I would say one country, many Americas. I'd have kept this because America is an idea. A nation is an idea. Thomas Alito Gorsuch Kavanaugh. I'm concurring. You ain't concurring, are you, Stark? Anyway, the point is this. They think that the United States of America, the country United States of America, in order to be a citizen, you need to have a particular worldview. If you came here from somewhere else, the default position that they want to put in, and Kavanaugh can say he wasn't suggesting, but you told him how to do it. How is that not a suggestion? What they saying is you need to define citizenship, not just by where you came out of your mother's womb soil, but how you think. If your parents came here from somewhere else, your mom came here from somewhere else, then we're going to assume that you loyal to wherever she came from, which is why the idea of more than one passport intrigues me for now. I know there's a legal reason why it wouldn't count, but I don't think any of that stuff is not up for negotiation. But I love this. One nation, many Americas. But then the pictures don't reflect the many Americas. Not really. They in Philly. Now the lie, I'm going to say the lie. The story that the young boy told me yesterday told us as we standing there, we all standing there, that we can't go in right there 30 feet into the actual yard that we can see all up and down it. But we standing out here with all these other people. I say all these other people, wasn't that many people. Because people done passed out from heat stroke and all this kind of thing. I'm like, that's a lie. Because I know this cheap bastard didn't pay for cooling tents and medical gear. Because this is the private thing, not private. This is the privately funded thing, the Freedom 250 thing. You can see he done branded Freedom 250 all over the buildings. NOAA, National Oceanic and Aviation Administration, not Aviation Administration, Aeronautic Administration. The buildings downtown, straight Stalin-esque, these huge ass banners over the Department of Transportation. You got the Kitty Hawk, looks like it's over by the Air and Space Museum on one side of the banner, and the other one looks like a plane with curved wings. It says, is that one of Elon Musk's planes? It says, brought to you by Donald Trump and Scruffy Sean Duffy. I'm like, you see his picture glowering from the Department of Justice. I'm like, what the hell? That Freedom 250, Freedom 250, Freedom 250. America 250, as you said, Prof, is a thing they set up 10 years ago. And then he to do what they're doing, was supposed to have done today in the months leading up to it. Unfortunately, as you said, he created another entity. First of all, he tried to take over the America 250, the congressionally funded piece. And he couldn't fire the people in there. Although the case we saw this week in terms of him getting rid of the FTC commissioner, Democratic FTC commissioner, this Supreme Court will let him do whatever the hell he wants to do because they're political hacks. That's what John Roberts is. Certainly what Alito is. But the point is this. He couldn't take it over. They wouldn't let him fire the 4 people because they weren't appointed by the president. He couldn't fire them. So what does he do? As you say, he creates this shell called Freedom 250, gives tens of millions of dollars to the same group that organized the January 6th rally that led to the damn riot, the white riot, funnels the money through there and siphons it all off. So when we go into the the Science and Industry building. So if you're ever into the Smithsonian Museum, Let me see if I have a blank index card here. I won't take, I read it, but here's a blank. So the National Mall like this, right? Washington Monument up here, Capitol down here, and then a big rectangle. Over in this corner, you have the Museum of the American Indian, and go all the way across to the other corner of here, you see the Museum of African American History and Culture. When I was there with Dan Black at the Museum of the American Indian years ago, he was reading from The Coming, and we had the thing there because this museum hadn't been built yet. I said, when they finish this building, we got them surrounded. You got the indigenous over here, and you got the Africans over here, and we got the spiritual thing surrounded. This is the quad. This is where the big boy state fair is going on. On these corners, there's all these museums. So you got American Indian, you got Air and Space Museum, you got the Hirshhorn Museum, you got the Smithsonian Castle right here. But before you get to the castle, you have another building called the Science and Technology Building. They don't use that a lot. The only time I've been in there is for the Folklife Festival, the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. Well, yesterday it was open. Why? And on this side, by the way, you got the art museums, you got natural history, you got the Museum of American History. You come down here, you got Namak, the so-called Blacksonian, across the street right there. But when went up in the castle, then went to the oh, by the way, keep going this way, you got the Asian Museum, which used to be the Sackler, but you know, drugs. And then you cross met, you got the Museum of African Art. There wasn't a lot of people in there yesterday. So but going to the Science and Technology Building, the old building, which was the first Smithsonian building, that's the one they actually wanted to give to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, but they said, no, we're going to build our own building. They went down here. We went in there and it was full. Well, it wasn't really full. It was people in there trying to get out the heat because they got put out the mall. And I'm looking around and it dawned on me, oh my God, this is what's left of the Folklife Festival. If you've ever been to the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, shout out to the great Bernice Johnson Reagan, ancestor, the late Bernice Johnson Reagan. Shout out to Dr. James Early, for many years worked for the Folklife Festival. Shout out to the women and men of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. Now under the direction of the secretary of the Smithsonian, the great Lonnie Bunch, Dr. Lonnie Bunch. The Folklife Festival always does a couple of things every year. It highlights cultures, 2 or 3. Usually one from the United States, it might be Appalachia, it might be Black Gospel, it might be whatever. And then it does something from the hemisphere, usually indigenous people, always, but also specific, maybe Peru, right? Might be Argentina, something like that. And then it might go in a direction that deals with a particular cultural expression. It might be, I mean, one year they had like Central American surfboarding or something, not surfboarding, what do they call it when you're on a board with skates? Anyway, not surf. Surf is in the ocean. What's the thing on the ground? I'm talking about this other stuff.
Skateboarding.
Skateboarding. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, bro. Skateboard. I was like, wait a minute. Smithsonian Folklife Festival got a whole theme for the next 2 weeks of skateboarding in Central America. So, and they would have these big ass tents out there on that same mall that he's ruined. These big tents, and they go through the whole mall. So, and then they got like open air tents, and you got like outdoor auditorium set up. So I said, let me go down here and see. So I sit in probably, it's like maybe like 150 chairs sitting under this one tent. And these kids are on the stage talking about this stuff. And I'm sitting here listening to these kids from Brazil and, you know, Uruguay. This is fascinating. That's what this Folklife Festival does. And then you go into the building, the old Science Technology Building, the first Smithsonian building for exhibits. And they have all the stuff for sale. You know, the Folklife, Smithsonian Folklife people, they did all those recordings. You get the Mississippi Delta Blues recordings. You get the Voices of the Civil Rights Movement on CD. They got albums, everything. They got a whole thing set up for a bookstore. Well, you know, I've gotten so many back issues of Smithsonian or catalogs that are out of print because they go in their basement and pull out everything. That's why I got a lot of stuff that you can't find anywhere. I hold stuff, I can't find that. Yeah, because I go to the Folklife Festival and I go, it broke my heart yesterday. Went into the building. And on a scale of 1 to 10, if at its best it's a 10, it was a 2. These hillbillies who have attacked the signage at the president's house in Philadelphia, these hillbillies who have made subtle changes. I was reading in the Philadelphia Inquirer yesterday. to signage all over historic district in downtown Philadelphia, Center City, Philadelphia, Thomas Jefferson signage that took out mentions to slavery. This is what they've been working on. I saw exhibits in that building yesterday where they have changed the language on voting rights and civil rights, the language on slavery and captivity, the language on indigenous people, subtle changes. And if you're not paying attention, you won't realize they have been whitewashing. They have been working overtime. And I bet you it's a bunch of 22-year-olds who can't spell, using AI to rewrite all of this. In fact, I read an article about how they're using AI to do some of it. And then I saw the little corner where the bookstore was. There weren't 50 books. And they had maybe that many, maybe fewer recordings. It almost looked like they just pulled some stuff together and dumped it in there. And the older white lady, I was like, what happened? She said, oh, well, we moved things out to the States. I said, I read that. I said, but what happened here? This was the nerve center. And she just hung her head. So then I talked to the people who know. All the security guards, all the Smithsonian police force, because you know every single one of them was black. So I asked the sister, I said, boy, this MF got a hold of it, didn't he? She shook her head. She said, they trying to kill it. She said, but these people here wouldn't let it die. Respect. Because the people who work at the Smithsonian, they wouldn't let it die. But oh my God, the Smithsonian life support, the Folk Life Festival. And of course, there were no tents. There were no skateboarders from Central America. There were no thematic devotions to everything, sitar players in under one tent. Somebody over here saw the Universal Circus, or was it the Universal Soul? It was a black circus. They had a whole thing on black people in the circus. I sat in the audience and listened to a panel of black women who were all trapeze and high wire artists. I was like, all that, ain't none of that there. You know what's there? 50 booths with stuff you get when you stop at the damn travel plaza in Delaware on the way to New York City and pick up some brochures on places to go. That's what's in each of them little ass booths, and not even all of them, because places like Alaska ain't send nobody. Massachusetts, we ain't send nobody down here to this bullshit. Oh yeah, and a melting arch facsimile. And today, Bozo says he's going to give a speech. And they moved the start time down into late afternoon because they think it's about the heat. But I'm going to tell you why they canceled the mall yesterday. Philly, they canceled it because of the heat. The heat, I'm sure, was a factor that they told them National Guard kids to tell the rest of us. But I'm going to be crystal clear. Somebody let it slip past that 34-year-old blonde that prints off Bozo's stuff and told him, hey, man, ain't nobody down there. You know what? Clear it all till 5 o'clock. And then at 5, we'll let people back in. But by then, we'll just say, oh, everybody went home. That's why ain't nobody down here. Or better yet, shout out to Fox News, we'll just lie. They literally sitting on TV with nobody on the grass saying, oh, it's packed. Hannah Arendt, as I kind of wind this to where I want to go, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this today, but I think when we tie this together over the next 15, 20 minutes, you'll see where all this is coming and where what I had planned to do kind of fits in with what we're doing now. Hannah Arendt wrote an article for the New Yorker, which I think was the New Yorker, that sent her to Jerusalem in 1962. Eichmann in Jerusalem. Of course, Eichmann, Nazi propagandist, and he was on trial. And one of the things that she writes about in that article is something that we've all heard. If you haven't, this is something you should write down and then go look for that article. But it's been so much written on it, so many things written on it, whole books, in fact. She coined a term called the banality of evil. 4 words, the banality of evil. She says, when evil becomes banal, when we become attuned to it, when we accept it, better yet, when we think that it is normal or we can't do anything about it, that's when it triumphs. And she said, you know, the thing about totalitarianism, the thing about fascism in that regard, the thing about this thing that thinks that we think is inevitable and unstoppable. She said, at the heart of that kind of totalitarianism, its success isn't built on the conviction of the people who pursue it. In other words, it isn't built on the conviction of the Marxists or the conviction of the capitalists. It isn't built on the conviction of the Stalinist or the Nazi, in the case of Eichmann. It's built on all the rest of us no longer being able to distinguish between the fact, the truth, and the lie. So if you keep pushing this long enough, now we can't tell what's what. So that's when the banality of evil, that's when totalitarian triumphs. It's important to understand this. This woman who was born in Germany to Jewish parents who got the hell out of there, Hannah Arendt, very famous, right? This philosopher, So I'm sitting here looking at this cold, dead-eyed Nazi, and I'm realizing that the real challenge isn't him as much as it is all the rest of us who can't tell the difference between a fact and a lie anymore. This is what, as you say, Prof, you reading, everybody got a platform. I think so-and-so. Yeah. We can't afford to let you talk unchallenged. Because at this point, if we just say, okay, well, let's just say that's how you see it, and this is how I see it. No. You said that it's people living on the moon. You can't say that. Or you can, and then immediately we say, no, that's not true. We can't, otherwise you let that go, and the next thing you know, you can't tell just between the fact and the truth, and now fact and a lie, and now we are just screwed. It's very important to understand that. So what I thought, and please you all, this is just as a matter of housekeeping generally. If those of you who are not yet in Nubia, not yet in Knarrative, if you're watching this and participating in this in the YouTube space or beyond podcast space, when we put the descriptions for each week in underneath where the video is, after you've smashed the like button and subscribed, which, helps break that algorithm. We know the shadow band, but we also know that it's way beyond what we do here in this moment. When you read the description, that's written with the idea in mind of where we're talking about everything. If you took all those descriptions and put them all in one place, ultimately that will be the case, and publish them, what you'll see is how it all fits. You put some footnotes with them, and that's a book, and I would stand by that book. But at any rate, as the United States, as I'm reading here, notes the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, it confronts the deepest crisis, its deepest crisis of political integrity since the Civil War and Reconstruction. That's where we are. In fact, I would say, pursuant to kind of what Jackson is writing, but she wouldn't agree with this, I don't think, but that's okay, because, she'd have to agree once she lay the facts out. African people in this country are not talking about 250. Shouldn't be at all. Even as we read this poll that was taken last week, this Zabi poll that says that, 3 in 10 Black Americans fly the flag. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. To me, that's catnip. But the point is this. 250? At best, 151. Not Bacardi 151, but 151 years since the end of the Civil War in the United States. That is what Ketanji Brown Jackson refers to as the second founding. What I would refer to as maybe the beginning of the possibility of an American polity, of a U.S. polity, after Africans have been included, and still not, because it takes to 1924, which means 102 years ago, for the indigenous people to have been extended citizenship. And y'all know how I feel, I still think citizenship is a shrunken way of understanding our humanity in the world. It shouldn't matter where you are born, but we'll leave that for now. But the country's noting a 250th anniversary of its break with England, and it faces its greatest crisis of structural political integrity since the Civil War and Reconstruction. This ritual corridor between Juneteenth and July 4th that we're winding up with now exposes the widening gap between the United States' founding mythologies and its lived political realities. The founding mythology is less and less effective every year. Black people go to the 4th of July, fireworks, with some of y'all barbecuing right now. Listen to this, being in conversation. Hey, love y'all, everybody. But don't mistake that with this national feeling. In Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh's world, not going up, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. That might be grounds one day for revoking your citizenship, not on soil, but on blood. Read closely what they are writing and laying the foundation for. If they say, not us, well, Stephen Miller, hell yeah, Stephen Miller, this year's observance arrives amid Bozo's administration's transformation, mashing together his criminal enterprise, part of that $2 billion he's been stealing, Freedom 250 with America 250, which was Congress. And please understand, in that mashing, Bozo doesn't, here's the thing, you got religio-fascists. They're, what did Mike Johnson say this week? I'm the one protecting y'all. If they get the majority, they're going to be investigations. They're going to come out and have you. He said, but don't worry, I'm the one, I'm going to keep you safe. Damn, you just said it out your mouth, don't you? See, he's a ideologue. Bozo's not an ideologue. It's like this. These different interests, the billionaire class, the ideologues, the religio-fascists, people like that, they have agendas that pretty much align enough for them to move in the same direction. But they needed an avatar to get the votes, to keep them in place, to keep pushing that arrant banality of evil. And Bozo appeared And they say, nah, well, oh, yeah, okay, now we 10 toes down. Ain't that right, little Lynn Graham? You might get your ass beat by that doctor in South Carolina. Y'all check y'all vote registration. Once they realized he couldn't be stopped, they joined him, and Bozo was looking at them like, hey, man, I'll say whatever. This is what I want in exchange for being y'all's avatar. Give me everything for my family. I want the money. I want my son-in-law to be making billion-dollar deals with the Saudis. Qatar, I want them, you know, I want that $400 million jet they're going to send me. It's going to take another $400 million to restore it, and I'll fly it to North Dakota and land. And then after we're out of office, I'm going to take it for myself and put it in my presidential center, which I will have money, probably that money from the ballroom that will never be built. They one shot and gave me $1 billion, and we don't build a ballroom. I just put that, and then I have $3 billion. Anyway, the point is this. And they said, okay, it's a deal with the devil. They're political ideologues. They got all this agenda. Their avatar is enabling it. And in order for it to work, they got to protect him at all costs. So y'all can stop trying to argue policy, debate policy, go out there and organize all the people who are against this and break their political backs. This is not a time for dialogue, friends. Shout out to the DNC. It's not a time for dialogue. So this observance arrives at a moment where this whole thing has been transformed, accelerated to the ultimate deterioration. And this Trump versus Barbara 5-4 decision, and we've explained why we call it 5-4 instead of a technical 6-3, because they're trying to effectively rewrite either the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment or the enabling legislation, as we see what Beer Kavanaugh is saying, this is the way to go. And if you don't think them other ones will come with him, you're not paying attention. When you take it together with these renewed efforts to restrict immigration, to weaken the administrative state, as we saw. The man can fire whoever he wants. The administrative state was set up for the president not to be able to interfere. The court, like, he can do whatever the hell he wants. And redefine citizenship, by the way, restrict immigration. I think if y'all saw the assistant attorney general over there this week, put out a memo saying we're going to stop birth tourism. First of all, it's not a thing. It's not a thing if it's 100 people. It's not a thing if it's 1,000 people. It's not a thing if it's 20,000 people out of all the people that come here. But now they floated the idea of giving pregnancy tests at the airport or before you leave. Y'all, Handmaid's Tale, man, that's rated G compared to what they're trying to do. But taken together with these things, these developments raise a central question. The central question of this year's Semiquincentennial, 250 years, what becomes of a polity, of a country built on competing definitions of belonging when its white nationalist-fueled authority permanently fractures? We're at the moment of permanent fracture now, friends. Ken Burns has been trying to hold it together in his films. America, the possibilities of America. That's all beautiful soaring rhetoric. You see some progress, somebody cry, you play the right music. Oh yeah, see the movement image. But the more movies, more films he makes, and the next one, as he told me, is going to be Reconstruction, which is going to be very interesting. I can't wait to see what he's going to do with that. I know what he's going to have. Martha Jones on there. He might get Ketanji Brown Jackson. This is a last gasp effort by Ketanji Brown Jackson to hold in place something that I say has been undermined. She wrote a lot about Frederick Douglass and wrote a lot about how Black people are Americans, how Black people were citizens, because we were citizens because we knew that's we were born here, we had spilled blood, as Clarence Thomas said. She said, I agree with all that. But here's the problem. You seem to think that, watch this. Ketanji Brown Jackson to Clarence Thomas is like, you seem to think that the 14th Amendment was only for Black people, and it's not. I'm telling you that the sacrifices, the blood, all the stuff that you said, I agree with, but it leads to a universalist rendering that all the people born here are citizens, with the exception of diplomats. And at that time, the Indians, now they fixed that, right, so to speak. I'm saying Justice Jackson, there was never a consensus in our governance formations, who we are to each other, about what our relationship was to this social structure. Our embrace of U.S. citizenship wasn't because we loved the ideas of these white nationalists. It was because we like and want and need the civil protections of the state in order to live our full lives. Reading this opinion by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, which people are calling genius, and I agree, which people are saying is written for the ages, and I agree, which people are saying completely defines, which I disagree. Why? Because it's very much a nativist rendering. It's a nativist rendering in the fullest, well, I think in the imagination of many kind of blacks, particularly black intellectuals, it's the fullest imagining they can make and retain this social structure. I'm saying that's not enough. Why? Read this on page 4. She says here, one solution to gain traction in the early 1800s was to physically separate the freedmen and other black people from the general polity. Anti-slavery Northerners and pro-slavery Southerners found common cause in the idea that freed blacks would surely, quote, be happiest in a black-led republic beyond the contempt of and competition with white Americans. This vision of paternal caste prompted the creation of the American Colonization Society. That's true. Then she writes about the black law. She's quoting my friend Martha Jones. You see again the Lincoln quote there. But here's what I found interesting. She quotes over and over again Frederick Douglass. There's no Martin Delany. Because some of us was like, yeah, let's leave. And guess what? If it wasn't Africa, if it wasn't the Caribbean, let's go west. Where do you think DeMario Solomon Simmons people came from? Them Black Creek freedmen that walked out there with them indigenous people and the others who did the hundreds of black towns. We just want to be left alone. There's no room in this. It amazes me in this brilliant 20-page document, there's not one gesture toward black self-determination in that language. Where's Tulsa in here, Justice Jackson? Can't do it. Why? Because the whole argument she's making, watch this, hinges on the idea that it was white people, what I would call the social structure, which was determining how we viewed each other. It's a, look at this here. She says, still, the most freed blacks resisted the pressure to self-deport. She called it self-deportation. Some people call it immigration. Look, she said some, she qualified. Here's footnote 17. So what is she using in footnote 17? Let's see. See, generally brief for historians. This is the one that Martha and them wrote. Dr. Jones wrote, the amicus curiae, the amici curiae. She says, instead, many started organizing toward the creation of the kind of nation the colonizations suppose, one that guaranteed liberty and justice for all. Ooh, that's slick. So in the all black towns in Oklahoma, if a white person come to live there, they're gonna not give them rights. No, we're gonna give them rights too. That's what she means in some sense. It's universalist. Yeah, but it's an all black town, sis. And it ain't just an all black town because of segregation. It's an all black town because black people prefer that. So you got them 2 or 3 cool white people that live with you or the people you tolerate. Yeah, we don't want everybody to have rights, but make no mistake, that does not mean that we don't want to be in control. And this is what the integrationists cannot square with. Plus, let me channel my brother as I give a shout out to the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. We spent last Sunday at the B&O National Park Service site. So Baba Watella, all the people, Brother Gray, all the people who came out with Cobra, and Kichi and Ajwa and everyone else. We went out there for a remarkable moment. We did libation. Thank you, of course, Baba Jamoke, for closing us out and having us in our circle to understand the people who built the B&O Canal that runs from Georgetown through to Virginia and Maryland, the people, the African people who escaped on the Underground Railroad, those who were driven out of that work, who came back into D.C. and then lost their land in terms of subsequent assaults on African life through segregation and eminent domain. We spent that time there, and I'm mentioning it because one of the founders of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, the great Imari Abubakari Obadeli, in his master dissertation, which became a book, America, the Nation State, he raises something that he raised throughout his work. Shout out to him, Shoka Lumumba, Nkechi Taifa, all of them. Nkechi has brought back into print Reparations, Yes, the Case, Reparations, and the Article 3 briefs that they wrote, these lawyers. The question that Baba Imari would always ask is, when did they ever ask us what we wanted? We should have had a plebiscite like they should have in Puerto Rico. Do you want to stay here or not? Do you want to stay with control or not? Of your place or not? Do you want to leave or not? And if so, where you want to go? They never asked us. The assumption is we wanted to be Americans because somehow we had some national deep feeling for, no, we shed blood because we wanted to be left alone and free. She writes here. Still, most freed blacks resisted the pressure to self-deport. Don't put it in that language. Instead, many started organizing toward the creation of the kind of nation. Really, they were organizing toward the creation of a kind of space. What kind of nation, Justice Jackson? Maybe a black nation? The colonizations opposed. Ones that guarantee liberty and justice for all, sure. In the decades leading up to the ratification of the 14th Amendment, Black Americans organized and gathered in more than 600 local and national conventions across the country. Their delegates erected the political and intellectual scaffolding for the 14th Amendment and later for the Black Civil Rights Movement more generally. Now, I would go along with that. There's a new book that just came out. I just got my hands on this about 2 days ago. It's called We Are American Citizens, the Colored Conventions Movement, and the Long Struggle for Civil Rights. I'm not endorsing it or not endorsing it. I haven't started reading deeply in it. I read the introduction. Claire Boris Moriarty, she herself is not in the United States, professor of African American, well, she is, but professor of African American history and the co-director of the research unit at Transcrit at the University of Paris. Okay, she's not in the United States. But look at this. What attracted me to it, in addition to the fact that I didn't have it yet, so I had to get it, was this. Because I'm looking at these cats here. Look at it. This is just a list of illustrations. But Buddy, Henry Garnett went to West Africa. Mary Ann Shadd Cary went to Canada. James T. Holly, Haiti. The great Martin Robeson Delaney. Hey, Larry Oberdelli. I'm thinking about Larry Oberdelli Williams. I'm sorry. Ashe, our ancestor. Kwaku Larry Crow. Kwaku, you got to read this, brother, because I want to know what you think about it. You know what really attracted me to this? Let me see. Why, look at it. Now she talking about the name of it is We Are American Citizens. So why you got chapters in there like chapter 4, the National Colored Convention Movement splits over immigration. That's not what did she call it? What did Justice Jackson call it? Self-deporting. Yeah, self-deportation. It's immigration. We going somewhere else. What is this? Watch this. Chapter 5, the apex of black nationalism. No, not nationalism. Y'all know what transnationalism is? Transnationalism means we are here and we're connected to the people there. As Martin Delaney said, we're a nation within a nation. I wish he had quoted Martin Delaney. For those of you say that I'm picking at it, no. Let me tell you why I'm not picking at it. Because this is a deeply researched, deeply written opinion, which means the evasion of Martin Delaney, Henry Garnett, Bishop James T. Holly, Mary Ann Shadd Cary, that evasion is deliberate. You can't say that there are 600 local and national conventions across the country. Put a footnote there. At the footnote, see Colored Conventions Project. That's my friend Gabrielle Foreman and them out there at Penn State. All the stuff's online. You can't do that. And then quote Manisha Sinha's brilliant book, The Rise and Fall of the Second American Republic, Reconstruction 1860, beginning of the Civil War, 1920, which goes past the passage of the 19th Amendment. You can't do that and not encounter not only Martin Delaney and the rest of them people, but the argument that many of us had, which continues to this day, on what should our relationship be to the polity. But that's not what Justice Jackson is doing here. What she's doing is slapping Clarence Thomas's ass around and establishing that the majority opinion should never come back to this court again on the question of citizenship. I understand it. I respect it. I must also say, though, that you have to have a full-throated reading of the whole thing. Otherwise, you run the risk of mistaking who Black people are. So using our framework, now we come to the end. Today's session, where I'd intended to go, and which I'm going to end with just briefly, continues to work of reframing this semi-quincentennial, not as a celebration of 1776. That's out. That's absurd. Not for Clarence Thomas. He would have been happy perhaps to shine some shoes or pick some cotton, or in that case, he's from Seattle and Gullah Geechee guy. So maybe some rice and indigo. But as an opportunity to rethink time, to rethink citizenship, and to rethink political community through the last 250 years, if you want to use that marker, of Black self-determination. It's provoked in part by the constitutional vision of Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson. To the degree that it reaches its limits, as we've been talking about, it rejects the slave servile perspective of Clarence Thomas and encourages those who would make a descendants of slaves argument not to embrace Clarence Thomas, not to embrace him on this, unless you too are an anti-immigrant nativist, because that's exactly what Sam Alito is. And that's what Thomas is when you read them 91 pages. We understand citizenship as shield and struggle. It contrasts narratives of inclusion, of fealty, and liberation. Those Negro Convention movements, those Reconstruction era movements, and everything that came after are attempts at Black self-determination.